Hey everyone, Jim and Brian here from DrinkABeerandPlayAGame, and today we're looking at the 5th major installment of the Resident Evil franchise, Resident Evil 0. Brian, what's wrong?
I don't care about this game.
Brian, care about the game, it's inventive and new.
You dick rode this game so hard that when I played it, my hopes were up here. You know where they ended up, Jim? Down here.
Like, this here?
Let's just get into this one.
Here?
Ow!
Originally released to the Gamecube in 2002, this was developed and published by Capcom. It later came out on the Wii, Windows, PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. This game was a departure of sorts because instead of controlling one character and then maybe moving on for a little while to a different character, or starting with one character and then starting over with a different character, you actually control two characters at the same time with a partner zapping system, so that's kind of cool. But then again, they also took away the magical treasure chest, so what the fuck? Anyway, let's just get into it. The graphics. Well, first things first, this game came out after the Resident Evil remake, and only by a few months, so you can tell that it really came off of the same engine, but it just perfected it a little bit more to turn into just a gorgeous looking game for the system. Overall, because of the style of a lot of the first party games, GameCube games kind of aren't as held in high regard graphically, even though it's a powerhouse. So, this game really shows what the console can do. The dynamic lighting, just the eerie sense that you get from everything. The backgrounds are just so detailed, the character models have never looked better. Everything about this game is just so impressive visually. If I had to have a minor gripe...
Is it that Billy's character kind of looks like George Clooney's from Dusk Till Dawn?
You know what? I can go with that. I guess if I had an overall complaint, it would just be the designs of the main characters themselves. Of course, Rebecca has to look kind of like how she did in Resident Evil 1 since this is a prequel, but just Billy's so early 2000s generic bad boy.
Out
like,
of place.
It's so, yeah, it's very out of place for the rest of the series. Just with the characters we've seen before and really since. And, I mean, Resident Evil 4 had a Napoleonic midget, so you tell me, you have to really try hard to stand out in this series for the worst. Yeah, outside of that, it's just gorgeous. So we both gave it 9s. When it comes to beer, you don't need any. When it comes to sound, it's just a great package here. The voice acting between the two main characters is actually good, and you can actually feel through their acting the relationship that's forming between these two characters. The sounds in the game are just like the remake. It's gory and just squishy. It's so squishy. It's awesome for a horror game like this.
Goddamn leeches!
Oh, those leeches. And you get that surround sound, so you can hear, you know, zombie groans from far off as they come closer to you. So it just gives you that whole real sense of just what a Resident Evil game should be. The music in the game's very good, it's appropriate. It's probably one of the less memorable ones, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, you know, it's there and it's a lot of what we've heard before, but it works, so not really much to complain about. If I had to really have any criticisms, it would just be, it's nothing overly new in any sense of the word. It's almost playing it safe, but when it comes to Resident Evil, it's perfect for what it is, so we gave it 8s. And when it comes to beer, I'll just add 1 beer for the voice acting. They did a great job in this one.
The control continues with the tradition of having tank controls. However, as Jim mentioned, this is based on the same engine that the Resident Evil remake was made, so you have the 180-degree spin and the ability to reload without going into your menu or waiting till you were completely empty. Those were 2 positives of this game. Other than that, it's the same exact tank controls that you're used to throughout all the other Resident Evils. It does feel a bit smoother. Maybe it's because of the way it played with the GameCube controller and now you're using the analog versus just the D-pad. I'm not sure, but there's something that felt a little better about the controls, and especially if you eventually play it on the Xbox 360 or PS4 like Jim mentioned, with the HD remaster, there's really no complaints. The switching between characters is very seamless. It's one button, which I really appreciate because some games could really fuck that up. So, when it comes to scores, we both gave it a 7. The only real disappointment is that a game that has such a better engine to run on is still relying on kind of the same old tank controls. So when it comes to beer, I'm just going to add 1 because I wish they would have really taken the chance to change things up with this game. The gameplay. Well, you've heard me say it many times with these other Resident Evil reviews. You have the same mechanics of inventory management, fighting off monsters, having to manage with a very limited ammo supply, limited weapons, and a few interesting puzzles throughout the way. I'm going to throw a controversial opinion out there, and I'm not so sure if it's super controversial, but this is one of my least favorite Resident Evils from the main series, and it really boils down to 2 main reasons. The first, they got rid of the inventory chest, and goofy as they may have been, it was something you were very used to, semi-convenient depending on which difficulty setting you were playing on, but it's what you were used to. They got rid of that, so in this game you have the option to drop inventory anywhere, which is interesting and unique. However, it ends up making you have to backtrack so much more than all the previous Resident Evils. Add on top of that when you have to have 2 characters, you would think, oh cool, then I really won't have to worry about dropping a lot of inventory. But once again, the amount of time you actually spend side by side is fairly limited. There are a lot of unnecessary puzzles thrown at you just because you have this 2-player system, which was really more or less, I felt like, a way to show off this technology of using the 2 different players and the ability to switch back and forth. Like passing things back and forth to each other through a dumbwaiter. It's kind of cool, but it just felt unnecessary to me personally. And it made the game go a little bit longer just so you had the option of doing things like that. Other than that, the environment is exactly what you want out of a Resident Evil game, and I love the idea of starting off on a train. Of course, you end up in a mansion and all the other familiar spots, but that initial train, I really liked it, and it's done in a really creepy way, so I did give it some points there. I still can't get over the annoyance and the amount of backtracking you have to do in this game, and this is going to seem like a really weird gripe, but okay, in past Resident Evils, there was always differences between the characters. One could do things, the other couldn't. For some reason in this game, Rebecca is unable to push items, and items that don't seem that big of a deal. And that's why Billy comes in and he can push things. I'm actually okay with that logic, but when she can't push a bookshelf and then you go back to Resident Evil 2 and Sherry Birkin can push a goddamn humongous crate that's bigger than her, there's a little bit of an issue I have with that. Once again, stupid gripe. Probably no one ever brings that up. I just couldn't believe that Rebecca is a badass special forces girl and she can't even push a bookshelf. And finally, I do want to talk about the story. I love the fact that this was a prequel to Resident Evil 1. I had a weird issue with the fact that they tied so much of it into leeches, because the idea of Resident Evil 1 was you had this really cool virus which turned people into zombies and then some other mutated creatures. This takes that idea but then adds an element of the leeches, which, I don't know, to me it almost semi-diminished the original T-Virus. I know they still provide enough backstory with how the T-Virus was created, which I love, so I'm being real nitpicky. Let me shut the hell up. When it comes to gameplay, I gave it a 6, Jim gave it a 7, and when it comes to beer, I'm just going to add 1 for that unnecessary amount of backtracking you're going to do just because there's no more inventory chests.
When it comes to originality, the biggest, most obvious one here is the 2-player switching back and forth mechanic of the game. It's something that had never been done before, and we really wouldn't see it again for almost really ever. Maybe that says it wasn't that great of an idea, maybe it just means it wasn't properly implemented. I'm kind of in the latter on this one, but it's still cool that they took a risk like this. Still, we hate the fact that there's no inventory chest because god damn the backtracking. So besides the Leech Hunter mode, it also is the first game to really go deeper into the backstory of the whole franchise, which it's actually kind of cool to see. And I think they do a really good job of just building out the world more. With all that being said, Brian gave it a 6 and I gave it a 7. Maybe I went a little too high on this one, but I can really appreciate what it did for the overall lore of the franchise. And when it comes to beer, I'll add 2 beers. 1 for the switching back and forth, and 1 for Leech Hunter. Why not?
When it comes to replayability, you've probably heard me say this way too many times, but depending on how fast you beat the game and the mode on what you select, you unlock the new Leech Hunter mode, you can unlock new costumes, and if you're playing the HD remake, you can actually unlock Wesker and upgrade it Rebecca. So those are all really cool items, but it's all things we've seen before in the past. I'll be honest, the Leech Hunter mode did not have me coming back a lot. I played through it once, and it was fine, but yeah, the replayability just really isn't here. The game itself, I never found it to be hard. You just do so much backtracking that's probably the most annoying part, so I'm sure there are speedrunners out there who can still beat this game in ridiculously fast times. But for me, this was one of the least replayable games in the franchise, so we both gave it 3s. When it comes to beer, I'm not going to add any. I think we've pointed out enough nitpicks with this game. So overall, I may have said a lot of negative things about this game, but there are a lot of great moments, and the atmosphere is still just as good as most of the original Resident Evil games. Where it falls down, we've said multiple times, that god-awful inventory system, and Billy is just such a meh character that really drags it down. I love the amount of backstory you get for the Resident Evil series, and some of the bosses are a little inventive, I'll say that. But overall, for me, it still isn't the greatest, and honestly, it's probably one of the weakest in the entire main series. So, we both gave it 7s. I don't know what your take is, Jim.
I liked it a lot more when I was 15, I'll say that. I still think it's a good game, it's just the backtracking really is a killer. And I'll almost say the game kind of suffers a little bit from almost being too familiar. Because most of the game takes place in another mansion, with another underground laboratory. So it's not really, outside of the main gameplay mechanic of switching between the players, it doesn't really take that big of a risk as far as more so
offering something new. Yeah.
So you have a at times frustrating game mechanic with a familiarity that doesn't really set it apart. So it kind of leaves you with more of an average title in the series. I still think it's about the midway point of the overall, but yeah. I would never call it a bad game, but I can see why it's one that most people don't bring up all that often.
Yeah, so overall, interestingly enough, this actually got 7 from us. So it scored just a little bit higher than Code Veronica. Honestly, I don't know if I'd go back to this one as much, but on a technical scale, the control is still very smooth, kind of goes back to that smoother style from Resident Evil 3. Still doesn't have the dodge, but the game looks amazing, the soundtrack's on point, and yeah, the atmosphere is really where it's at for me.
Yeah, I think coming off of the Resident Evil remake, which is just timeless, it's basically survival horror perfection.
Yeah.
To this, it's a little bit of a letdown, but I think I actually wound up playing this before I played the Resident Evil remake, so this had more of an impact on me.
Sure. So, I would highly recommend, if you like the Resident Evil series, get this. I think it's on a combined disc with the Resident Evil remake. It's called like the HD
Origins Collection.
Like so you can get it dirt cheap. I mean, I got that Origins Collection for $5 on Xbox Live. So wait for a sale or just go out and get it because they're 2 excellent games.
Yeah, there's really, if you've never played either of these games, which I don't know how you haven't, and even if you've never played the Resident Evil 0 before, this is the easiest way to get into it, so you might as well just jump in at this point.
Yeah. So with that, guys, thanks for sticking with us, and as always, cheers.
Cheers.
When it comes to beer pairing, I'm going to have to go with the Mountain Town Brewing Company's Trainwreck Ale. This beer comes in at a hefty 8.2%, it's available year-round, and it's a delicious American Amber Red Ale. Brewed with maple syrup and honey to give this a little bit more sweetness, similar to Resident Evil 0, it's a unique twist on the typical Amber Ale. I feel these two will play nice off of each other, and if you're lucky enough, get yourself a 6-pack, sit down, and enjoy this game. But remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.